In a ballroom glittering with wealth, waitress Amara Jackson shocks a powerful CEO by answering his insult in flawless German. A spark ignites, changing both their lives forever. Before we get into the story, comment below where in the world you are watching from today. The Grand Berlin Hotel ballroom sparkled with crystal chandeliers and the quiet hum of wealth. Men in tailored suits and women draped in diamonds filled the room, their voices a mix of languages as deals were made over champagne. Amara Jackson adjusted her black serving uniform and took a deep breath. 6 months in Berlin and she still wasn't used to these fancy events. Back home in Atlanta, she'd been on track for a PhD in linguistics. Her father, Professor Jackson, still couldn't understand why she'd turned it down to travel the world. "I don't need another degree to prove I'm smart," she'd told him before leaving. "I need to live." Now here she was, serving drinks to the ultra-rich instead of teaching classes on Germanic languages. The irony wasn't lost on her. "Table 6 needs wine service," her supervisor said, pointing to a corner where 3 businessmen sat. "And remember, these are important clients. Smile, serve, stay invisible." Amara nodded, picked up the expensive bottle of red wine, and made her way across the room. She'd gotten good at being invisible. It was amazing what people would say when they thought you couldn't understand them. At table 6, a young man with ice blue eyes was speaking rapidly into his phone. His German was flawless, his voice commanding. He hung up just as Amara approached. "Excuse me, gentlemen," she said in English with a practiced smile. "Would you like me to pour your wine now?" The blue-eyed man looked up, and for a moment he seemed startled. Amara was used to that look. In Berlin, black women weren't common in luxury hotels, and certainly not black women who spoke German. "Yes, please," he replied in English, his accent thick but charming. Amara began pouring, careful not to spill a drop of the wine that probably cost more than her weekly rent. As she leaned between 2 of the men, the blue-eyed one turned to his associate and spoke in rapid German. "Sie ist atemberaubend, zu schön Tische zu bedienen. Was für eine Verschwendung." "She's stunning." Too stunning to be serving tables, what a waste. Amara kept her face neutral, though her hand tightened slightly on the bottle. She'd heard worse. Much worse. Usually she let these comments slide, protecting her job by pretending not to understand. But something about this man's casual dismissal of her worth ignited a spark of defiance. She finished pouring his glass last, then leaned slightly closer and replied in perfect German, "Lustig. Ich dachte, Intelligenz wäre attraktiver als Annahmen." Funny. I thought intelligence was more attractive than assumptions. The shock on his face was worth whatever trouble she might get into. His eyes widened, and he actually choked on the sip of wine he'd just taken. His colleagues stared in surprise as he coughed into his napkin. Amara straightened up, switched back to English, and said, "Enjoy your evening, gentlemen," before walking away with her head held high. She half expected to be called to the manager's office immediately, but nothing happened. The rest of the evening passed in a blur of serving and clearing, though she could feel the blue-eyed man watching her from across the room. As the event wound down and guests began to leave, Amara was collecting glasses from empty tables when someone approached her from behind. "Excuse me." She turned to find the blue-eyed man standing there, looking slightly uncomfortable. "I'm Lucas Ehrenfeld," he said, switching to German, "and I owe you an apology." Amara raised an eyebrow. "For assuming I was just a pretty face who couldn't understand you." He had the grace to look embarrassed. "Yes, it was rude and presumptuous." "It was," she agreed, continuing to collect glasses. "May I ask your name?" She hesitated, then said, "Amara Jackson." "American?" "Yes, Atlanta, Georgia. And you speak German like a native." It wasn't a question, but his eyes were curious. "I speak 4 languages," she said, not bothering to hide the pride in her voice. "And I'm learning my 5th. Lucas looked genuinely impressed. "That's remarkable." "Is it? Or is it just remarkable because I'm serving your wine instead of sitting at your table?" He had no quick answer for that. "Good. I should get back to work, Mr. Ehrenfeld," she said, lifting her tray of glasses. "Will you be working tomorrow night?" he asked suddenly. "There's another event here, a charity auction." "I work most nights," she replied, not sure why he was asking or why her heart had started beating faster. He nodded. "Good night then, Miss Jackson." "Good night." As Amara walked away, she didn't see the way Lucas's eyes followed her, or how he pulled out his phone to make a call. The next evening, Amara was surprised to find herself assigned to the VIP section of the charity auction. Usually, newer staff weren't given these prime positions. Special request, her supervisor said with a knowing smile. Someone was very insistent that you be their server tonight. Amara had a sinking feeling she knew exactly who that someone was. Sure enough, when she approached her first table, Lucas Ehrenfeld was sitting there alone, looking perfectly at ease in a black tuxedo that probably cost more than her car. "Good evening, Mr. Ehrenfeld," she said professionally, switching to German. "Would you like to see the wine list?" "I would," he replied, also in German. "And perhaps you could recommend something. I trust you have excellent taste." Amara narrowed her eyes slightly. Was he mocking her? "The Rheingau Riesling is exceptional," she said, "but perhaps too subtle for some palates." A smile tugged at his lips. "I'll take that as a challenge, Miss Jackson." When she returned with his wine, he asked, "Do you always work such long hours? Do you always ask personal questions of the waitstaff?" "Only when they intrigue me." Amara poured his wine without responding. "I'm curious," he continued, "what brings an American linguistics expert to Berlin as a waitress?" She looked up sharply. "How did you know I studied linguistics?" He had the decency to look slightly embarrassed. "I may have done some research." "You mean you looked me up?" Amara felt a chill. "That's crossing a line, Mr. Ehrenfeld." "I apologize. In my world, information is currency. It's a hard habit to break." "Well, in my world, privacy is respect, something you might want to consider." She turned to leave, but his voice stopped her. "I'd like to make it up to you." "That's not necessary. Please, just dinner, as an apology." Amara looked at him skeptically. "I don't date customers." "It's not a date," he insisted. "Just a conversation between two people who got off on the wrong foot. I'm working. After work or on your day off?" She sighed. "Why are you so persistent, Mr. Ehrenfeld?" He looked at her intently. "Because in my world, people rarely surprise me." "You did." Against her better judgment, Amara found herself saying, "I'm off on Sunday." His face lit up with genuine pleasure. "Sunday it is." Throughout the rest of the evening, Amara served other tables, but she was acutely aware of Lucas watching her, not in the predatory way she was unfortunately familiar with, but with genuine curiosity. It was unsettling. As the event ended and she was preparing to leave, her supervisor handed her an envelope. "From your admirer," he said with a wink. Inside was a business card with a phone number handwritten on the back, along with a note. "For Sunday. Text me when and where. L.E." Amara tucked it into her pocket, telling herself she probably wouldn't use it. By Sunday morning, she'd changed her mind at least a dozen times. There was something about Lucas Ehrenfeld that both irritated and intrigued her. His assumptions about her had been offensive, yes, but his willingness to acknowledge his mistake was unexpected. Finally, she sent a text. "Café Landwehr at 2 p.m. Nothing fancy. Amara." His reply came instantly. "See you there." The cafe was one of her favorites in Berlin, small, local, and far from the luxury hotels where she worked. When she arrived, she half expected Lucas not to show, or to look uncomfortably out of place in such a modest setting. Instead, she found him already seated at a corner table, dressed in jeans and a simple sweater, looking surprisingly normal without his business attire. "You came," he said, standing as she approached. "I said I would," she replied, sitting across from him. "You look different," he observed, "outside of the uniform." "So do you." A waitress came to take their order, and Amara was surprised when Lucas ordered in flawless German with none of the condescension she'd heard in his voice at the hotel. "How many languages did you say you speak?" he asked after the waitress left. "4 fluently. English, German, French, and Spanish. I'm learning Mandarin, but it's challenging." "Impressive. I manage 6, but I've had advantages most don't." "Like expensive tutors from birth?" He smiled ruefully. "Something like that." Their coffee arrived, and Amara took a sip, studying him over the rim of her cup. "So, Mr. Ehrenfeld." "Lucas, please." "Lucas, you've apologized. We're having coffee. Curiosity satisfied?" He leaned forward slightly. "Not even close. Tell me why a woman with your talents is serving wine instead of teaching at a university." Amara sighed. "Not everyone wants the path that's expected of them." "And what path was expected of you?" "My father is a professor at Emory University. He had my whole career mapped out. PhD, tenure track, academic papers, conferences, the whole scholarly life. And you didn't want that." "I wanted to choose for myself," she said simply. "I wanted to see the world before I committed to anything." "So you came to Berlin." "So I came to Berlin. I defer my PhD offer every year, and my father gets a little more disappointed each time." "But you're happy." Amara considered the question. I'm free, that's not always the same as happy, but it's what I need right now. Lucas nodded thoughtfully. I understand that more than you might think. Do you? The successful venture capitalist with the world at his feet. He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. Golden handcuffs are still handcuffs, Amara. Something in his tone made her look at him more carefully. What would you do if you were free? The question seemed to surprise him. I'm not sure anyone's ever asked me that before. Their conversation flowed easily after that, moving from languages to travel, from books to music. Lucas was surprisingly well-read and genuinely interested in her opinions. Hours passed unnoticed. The afternoon crowd thinned, and evening customers began to arrive. I can't believe we've been here so long, Amara said, glancing at her watch. Time flies, Lucas replied, looking equally surprised. Would you like to get dinner? She hesitated. I should probably get home. Of course, he said, hiding his disappointment well. May I walk you? It's not far. Outside, the Berlin evening was cool and pleasant. They walked in comfortable silence for a block before Lucas spoke again. I'd like to see you again, Amara. She stopped walking. Lucas, I need to be clear. I'm not looking for anything complicated. My life here is temporary. So is everything, he replied. I'm just asking for dinner, not forever. She smiled despite herself. You're persistent. I'm told it's one of my better qualities. Fine, dinner. But somewhere normal, not some fancy place where I've served drinks. Deal. His smile was genuine and warm. I know just the place. As they reached her apartment building, Amara felt a strange reluctance to end the evening. Lucas Ehrenfeld was not at all what she had expected. Behind the wealthy businessman facade was a person with depth and humor. Thank you for today, he said, standing a respectful distance away, for giving me a second chance. Everyone deserves a second chance, she replied. Good night, Lucas. Good night, Amara. She watched him walk away, telling herself that this was just a brief distraction, nothing more. She wasn't staying in Berlin forever, and men like Lucas Ehrenfeld didn't end up with women like her. But as she climbed the stairs to her apartment, she couldn't help smiling at the thought of seeing him again. Back at his penthouse apartment, Lucas stood at the window overlooking the city lights. For the first time in years, he felt something he hadn't expected, genuine excitement about another person. Amara Jackson was unlike anyone he'd ever met. He picked up his phone to text her about their dinner plans, then hesitated. He didn't want to seem too eager, but the thought of her smile made him throw caution aside. Tuesday at 7, I'll pick you up, so. Lucas. Her reply came minutes later. Tuesday works, but I'll meet you there. Where are we going? He smiled and typed, it's a surprise, but wear something comfortable. I don't like surprises. You'll like this one, trust me. There was a long pause before her response. We'll see. Lucas put down his phone, still smiling. For the first time in longer than he could remember, he was looking forward to something that had nothing to do with business. Across town, Amara was having similar thoughts. She told herself not to get carried away. This was just dinner with an interesting man, nothing more. But as she set her phone down, she couldn't help wondering what Tuesday would bring. Tuesday evening arrived faster than Amara expected. She changed outfits 3 times before settling on a simple red dress that was casual enough for most restaurants, but could pass for elegant if needed. This is just dinner, she told her reflection. Not a big deal. But it felt like a big deal, and that worried her. Getting involved with someone like Lucas Ehrenfeld wasn't in her plans. Berlin was temporary. Her life here was temporary. Her phone rang, interrupting her thoughts. She checked the screen and sighed. Her father. Hi, Dad, she answered, switching to English. Amara. Professor Jackson's voice was warm but tinged with the disappointment she'd grown used to. How's the weather in Berlin? Cold, rainy, the usual. And the job? Still serving tables? Amara closed her eyes briefly. Yes, Dad, still serving tables. And before you ask, I'm still not ready to come back and start my PhD. The department chair asked about you again. Said your spot is still waiting whenever you're ready. I know. You tell me every time we talk. Because I don't understand why my brilliant daughter is wasting her potential pouring drinks for rich people instead of finishing her education. I'm not wasting anything, Amara said, her voice tight. I'm living my life on my terms. You were meant for podiums, not platters, Amara. It was an argument they'd had many times. No, I was meant for peace, and right now this is what peace looks like. Her father sighed heavily. Your mother would have wanted— Don't, Amara cut him off. Don't use Mom to make me feel guilty. A tense silence followed. Her mother had died when Amara was 15, and the loss had changed both of them. Her father had buried himself in academic work, while Amara had found escape in languages, learning how to express herself in words her father couldn't understand. "I just want what's best for you," he finally said. "I know, but I need to figure out what that is for myself." After a few more minutes of strained conversation, Amara ended the call, promising to think about coming home for Christmas. She checked her watch, almost time to meet Lucas. Pushing thoughts of her father aside, she grabbed her purse and headed out. The address Lucas had sent her wasn't a restaurant at all. It was an old building in a quiet neighborhood, with no sign indicating what might be inside. For a moment, Amara considered turning around. This was exactly the kind of strange situation her mother had warned her about. But then Lucas appeared at the door, his face lighting up when he saw her. "You came," he said, sounding genuinely pleased. "I said I would," she replied, echoing their exchange from the cafe. "Though I'm not sure where here is exactly." He smiled mysteriously. "Come inside and see." Lucas led her through a narrow hallway that opened into a large, warmly lit space. Amara gasped. It was a private kitchen, not a restaurant, but a beautiful professional kitchen with gleaming counters and state-of-the-art equipment. In the center stood an older woman with silver hair tied back in a neat bun, wearing a chef's apron. "Amara, this is Frau Schmidt. She was my grandmother's cook for 40 years, and she's agreed to teach us how to make a proper German dinner tonight." Frau Schmidt smiled warmly. "So this is your American friend who speaks better German than you do, Lucas." Amara raised an eyebrow at Lucas, who had the grace to look embarrassed. "I might have mentioned our first meeting," he admitted. "He said you put him in his place," Frau Schmidt said approvingly. "Good. He needs that sometimes." Amara laughed, immediately liking the older woman. "What are we cooking?" "Sauerbraten, red cabbage, and potato dumplings," Frau Schmidt answered. "Traditional food, not the fancy nonsense they serve at those hotels." For the next 2 hours they cooked together. Frau Schmidt was a patient teacher, showing them how to prepare each dish the way she had done for decades. Lucas was surprisingly adept in the kitchen, chopping and stirring with practiced ease. "You cook?" Amara asked, watching him expertly trim a piece of meat. "My grandmother insisted I learn. She said a man who can't feed himself is only half a man." "Smart woman." "She was," he said, a touch of sadness in his voice. "She raised me after my parents died, taught me everything important." "I'm sorry about your parents," Amara said softly. "Car accident. I was 7. He continued chopping, his movements precise. "What about your family?" "Just my dad now. My mom died when I was 15. Cancer." Lucas looked up, meeting her eyes with genuine understanding. "So we're both half orphans." The simple acknowledgement of their shared loss created a moment of connection deeper than anything they'd shared before. Frau Schmidt broke the moment, instructing them to stir the sauce. By the time dinner was ready, the kitchen was filled with delicious aromas and comfortable conversation. They sat at a small table in the corner, eating the meal they'd prepared together. Frau Schmidt had discreetly disappeared after serving, leaving them alone. "This was not what I expected," Amara admitted, taking a bite of the tender meat. "Better or worse? Different. In a good way." She looked around the kitchen. "Is this place yours?" Lucas nodded. "It's part of a building I own. I keep it for special occasions." "And is this a special occasion?" He looked at her intently. "I think it could be." The directness of his gaze made her heart beat faster. "Lucas, I know. You're not looking for complications. But would it be so bad to enjoy whatever this is while you're here?" Amara took a sip of wine, considering his words. "I leave eventually. That's the complication. Or maybe that's the freedom," he countered. "No expectations beyond the present." She laughed softly. "You're very good with words for someone who started our acquaintance with such a thoughtless comment." "I'm a fast learner." His smile was warm and genuine, especially when properly motivated. They talked late into the evening, sharing stories of their childhoods, their travels, their dreams. Lucas was fascinating, brilliant, but with a surprising humility about his accomplishments. When it was time to leave, he called his driver to take her home. "Thank you for tonight," she said as they stood waiting for the car. "It was unexpected. Good unexpected, I hope." "Very good," she admitted. He stepped closer, his eyes asking a question. Amara hesitated only a moment before nodding slightly. His kiss was gentle, almost tentative, and over too quickly. "I'd like to see you again," he said softly. "I'd like that too." The next few weeks passed in a blur. Despite her initial reservations, Amara found herself falling into a rhythm with Lucas. They met whenever her work schedule allowed, sometimes for elaborate dinners at hidden gems he knew throughout the city, sometimes for simple walks through Berlin's parks, talking for hours. Lucas began appearing regularly at the hotel when she worked, sitting in her section and speaking to her in German, waiting patiently for her breaks when they could share a few private moments. One evening, as she served his table where he sat with business associates, one of the men looked at her with obvious disdain. "Your usual wine, Mr. Ehrenfeld?" she asked professionally. "Yes, thank you, Miss Jackson," he replied formally, though his eyes were warm. As she poured, the associate, a thin man with cold eyes, spoke in rapid German. "Really, Lucas, isn't it time you stopped this little flirtation with the serving girl? The board is starting to talk." Amara kept her face neutral, though her hand tightened on the bottle. Lucas replied in equally rapid German, his voice like ice. "My personal life is not the board's concern, Heinrich, and I'd appreciate if you'd show Ms. Jackson the respect she deserves. I'm merely thinking of the company image. Frankfurt, Zurich, New York, they all have expectations about who represents the brand. Then they can adjust their expectations," Lucas said firmly. Heinrich glanced at Amara with a dismissive look. "Does she even understand what we're saying?" Before Lucas could answer, Amara spoke in perfect German, her voice pleasant but with steel underneath. "Every word, sir. Would you like me to repeat them back to you?" The man's face flushed red with embarrassment. Lucas didn't bother hiding his smile. "Will there be anything else, gentlemen?" Amara asked sweetly. "No, thank you," Lucas said, his eyes never leaving Heinrich's uncomfortable face. Later that night, when her shift ended, Lucas was waiting in the lobby. "You didn't have to wait," she said, though she was pleased to see him. "I wanted to apologize for Heinrich. He was out of line. I've heard worse." "That doesn't make it acceptable." Lucas looked genuinely upset. "You should never have to deal with that kind of disrespect." Amara touched his arm gently. "Hey, I handled it." "You did? Brilliantly." He smiled, but his eyes remained troubled. "But it bothers me that you had to." They walked out into the cool night air, heading toward her apartment. "Is it true?" she asked after a while. "Is the board really talking about us?" Lucas sighed. "Some of them. The old guard who think everything should be done the way it always has been. And what way is that? CEOs dating socialites from the right families, attending the right parties, playing the game. And I'm not part of that game." He stopped walking and turned to face her. "No, you're far more interesting than the game." The sincerity in his voice made her smile. "You're going to get in trouble." "Lucas Ehrenfeld, worth it," he said simply, taking her hand. At her apartment door, their goodnight kiss was longer, deeper than before, filled with a growing need that surprised them both. "Stay," she whispered against his lips. "Are you sure?" In answer, she unlocked her door and led him inside. The next morning, Amara woke to find Lucas already awake, watching her with a tender expression that made her heart skip. "What?" she asked, suddenly self-conscious. "You're beautiful when you sleep," he said softly. "Peaceful." She smiled, stretching. "What time is it?" "Early. I have a meeting at 8. The glamorous life of a CEO." He traced a finger along her cheek. "I'd much rather stay here, but duty calls." "Unfortunately." He kissed her forehead. "Dinner tonight?" "Can't. Double shift at the hotel." "Tomorrow, then." She nodded, and he kissed her properly before reluctantly getting up to dress. At the door, he paused. "Amara?" "I want you to meet someone. Someone important to me." "Who?" "My grandmother, Ilsa. She's the only real family I have left." Amara felt a flutter of nervousness. Meeting family was a step towards something more permanent. "Lucas, I know what you're thinking," he said quickly, "but she's 92 and her health isn't good. She's been asking to meet the woman who's been making me smile so much lately." Put that way, how could she refuse? "Okay." His face lit up. "Thank you. Saturday. We can drive out to her house in the countryside." "Saturday," she agreed. After he left, Amara sat on her bed, trying to process the rapid changes in her life. 2 months ago, she'd been content with her solitary existence in Berlin, focused on experiencing the city without attachments. Now, she was falling for a man who lived in a world completely different from hers. Her phone buzzed with a text from Lucas. "Missing you already." She smiled, typing back, "You left 20 minutes ago." 20 very long minutes. A second text followed. "By the way, Heinrich has been reassigned to our Zurich office." Amara stared at the phone in surprise. "You didn't have to do that." "I didn't do it for you, I did it for me. I don't work with people who lack basic respect." She wasn't sure how to feel about that. On one hand, it was a powerful gesture of support. On the other, it was a reminder of just how much influence Lucas wielded in his world, a world she wasn't sure she belonged in. The thought troubled her as she went about her day, working a lunch shift at the hotel. Lucas had integrated himself into her simple life with remarkable ease, but she had barely scratched the surface of his. What would happen when those worlds fully collided? Saturday came quickly. Lucas picked her up in a sleek black car, driving them himself instead of using his usual driver. "Nervous?" he asked, glancing at her as they left the city behind. "A little," she admitted. "What if she doesn't like me?" He laughed. "Impossible. You don't know that. I do. She'll love you because you challenge me. No one does that anymore except her." The drive took about an hour, winding through the German countryside until they reached a charming stone house surrounded by gardens. It wasn't the mansion Amara had expected, but a comfortable home that had clearly been loved for generations. "This is where you grew up?" she asked, as they pulled into the driveway. "After my parents died, yes. My grandmother sold the big house in the city and moved us here. Said I needed space to run and trees to climb, not marble floors and servants." A nurse opened the door as they approached, greeting Lucas warmly. "She's having a good day," the woman said. "Very excited about your visit." Ilse Ehrenfeld sat in a sunlit room filled with books, a small woman with Lucas's same ice-blue eyes, though hers were clouded with age. Her silver hair was arranged neatly, and despite her obvious frailty, she had an air of dignity that commanded respect. "Grandmother," Lucas said, kissing her cheek, "I've brought someone special to meet you." The old woman's eyes lit up as she turned to Amara. "So this is the American girl who speaks German better than my grandson." Amara smiled, immediately liking her directness. "I wouldn't say better, just differently." Sit, Ilse insisted, patting the chair beside her. "Lucas, go help Helga bring the tea. I want to talk to your young lady alone." Lucas raised an eyebrow at Amara, who nodded that it was okay. After he left, Ilse studied her with keen eyes. "He's different since he met you," the old woman said without preamble. "Happier, more like the boy I raised, and less like the businessman the world shaped." "He's a good man," Amara replied. "Yes, but sometimes he forgets that money is just money, and power is just power." Ilse reached out a gnarled hand to touch Amara's. "You remind him there's more to life. That's a precious gift. We're just enjoying each other's company," Amara said carefully. "I'm not staying in Berlin forever." Ilse smiled knowingly. "Plans change, dear. Hearts change them." Before Amara could respond, Lucas returned with a tea tray. "What secrets are you two sharing?" he asked lightly. "Women's secrets," his grandmother replied with a wink at Amara. "None of your business." They spent a lovely afternoon together. Ilse was a remarkable woman, sharp-minded despite her age, with fascinating stories of surviving the war as a child and rebuilding her life afterward. As the sun began to set, she asked Lucas to fetch something from her bedroom. When he was gone, she turned to Amara and recited a few lines of Goethe in perfect German. Only a woman who speaks many languages can truly understand the silence in a man's heart. Amara's eyes widened in surprise. "He doesn't show his heart easily," Ilse continued. "But when he does, it's worth having." "I'm not sure what I can offer someone like him," Amara admitted. "Perspective," Ilse said simply. "The one thing his money can't buy." Lucas returned then, carrying an old book. "Found it, grandmother." "Good. It's for Amara, poetry, Goethe, a proper education in German literature." On the drive back to Berlin, Amara was quiet, turning over Ilse's words in her mind. "What did my grandmother say to you?" Lucas asked, glancing at her. "You've been thoughtful since we left. She's worried about you, thinks you work too hard." He laughed. "She's been saying that for 20 years. She loves you very much. She's an amazing woman, survived things most of us can't imagine and still sees the good in the world." He reached over to take her hand. "Thank you for coming today. I liked her, a lot. She liked you too, I could tell." Back in the city, the lights of Berlin sparkled in the darkness as they drove toward Amara's apartment. The day had shifted something between them, deepening their connection in ways neither had expected. At her door, Lucas pulled her close. "Stay with me tonight? At my place?" She hesitated only briefly. "Yes." Lucas's penthouse apartment was exactly what she'd expected. Sleek, modern, with spectacular views of the city. What surprised her was how comfortable it felt, how lived in despite its obvious luxury. "What?" he asked, noticing her expression as she looked around. "It's nice. Feels like you somehow." He smiled, pleased by her observation. "It should. I designed most of it myself. No interior decorator. For the basics, yes. But the books, the art, those are mine. Things that matter to me." She moved to his bookshelf, running her fingers along the spines. Many were in German, but there were also books in English, French, Italian, and languages she didn't recognize. "You really do speak 6 languages," she said, impressed despite herself. "My grandmother's influence. She believed languages were windows to other worlds." "Smart woman." "She is." He came up behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist. "Like someone else I know." Amara turned in his arms. "Lucas, where is this going? Between us." His expression grew serious. "Wherever we want it to go. But realistically, you're a CEO with board meetings and investors. I'm a waitress with a deferred PhD and a return ticket to Atlanta that I keep postponing. Does it matter? Right now, in this moment?" She sighed. "Maybe not. But eventually, we'll figure it out." He kissed her softly. Together. As they moved to his bedroom, Amara pushed her worries aside, letting herself be present in the moment with this man who saw past her serving uniform to the woman beneath. But later, as Lucas slept beside her, she stared out at the Berlin skyline, wondering if Ilse was right, if hearts really could change plans that seemed so firmly set. Fall turned to winter in Berlin, and Amara found herself settling into a routine she'd never planned. 4 nights a week at the hotel, 3 nights with Lucas. Weekends exploring the city together or driving to the countryside to visit Ilse, whose health was gradually declining, but whose mind remained sharp as ever. The temporary life Amara had carefully constructed was beginning to feel permanent in ways that both thrilled and terrified her. One morning, as they shared breakfast in Lucas's penthouse, his phone rang. The call was brief, but his expression darkened as he listened. "Everything okay?" Amara asked as he set the phone down. "Board meeting, apparently it's urgent." He sighed, running a hand through his hair. "I'm sorry. I'll have to cancel our plans for today." "It's fine. I can use the time to catch up on my Mandarin studies." Lucas smiled, but the worry didn't leave his eyes. "You're too understanding. Part of my charm," she said lightly. "Go. Run your empire. I'll be here when you're done." He kissed her, lingering a moment longer than usual. "I'll make it up to you." After he left, Amara wandered around the penthouse, still not entirely comfortable being there alone. It was so different from her small apartment with its second-hand furniture and crowded bookshelves. Here, everything was sleek, expensive, and perfect. Her phone rang, her father calling. Perfect timing. "Hi, Dad." "Amara." His voice was unusually serious. "We need to talk about your future." She sighed, moving to the window to look out at the Berlin skyline. "We talk about it every time you call. This is different. The department chair is retiring next year, and he specifically mentioned you as someone they're considering for a tenure-track position. But they need to know now if you're coming back for the fall semester." "Dad, that's 9 months away." "Academic hiring doesn't wait, Amara. They need an answer by the end of the month." She closed her eyes, feeling the weight of the decision pressing down on her. "I don't know yet." "What's keeping you in Berlin? Still finding yourself by serving drinks?" The condescension in his voice stung. "Actually, I'm seeing someone." There was a pause on the other end. "Seeing someone? You never mentioned that before." "It's complicated." "Who is he? Another American expatriate?" "No, he's German. His name is Lucas Ehrenfeld." Another pause, longer this time. "Ehrenfeld? The venture capitalist?" Amara was surprised. "You know who he is?" "Of course I do. He's been in the financial news. His company funded the new technology center at MIT. Her father's voice had changed, growing interested. "You're dating Lucas Ehrenfeld?" "Yes." She wasn't sure she liked his sudden change in tone. "Well, that's impressive, Amara." "Why? Because he's rich and successful?" She couldn't keep the edge from her voice. "No, because he's brilliant. I've read about his innovations in tech investment. They say he has a gift for spotting potential." Amara wasn't sure how to respond. For once, her father seemed impressed by something in her life, but for all the wrong reasons. "How did you meet someone like that?" he asked. "I served him wine," she said flatly. "At the hotel." Her father was quiet for a moment. "And he's the reason you're staying in Berlin?" "He's part of it." "I see." She could almost hear him recalculating his approach. "Well, perhaps you could do your PhD at Berlin University." "With Ehrenfeld's connections—" "Stop," Amara cut him off. "Don't do that. Don't try to plan my life around Lucas now instead of around your expectations. I'm just trying to help you see the opportunities." "Dad, I have to go. I'll think about the position and let you know." She ended the call feeling unsettled. Her father's sudden interest in her relationship with Lucas had shifted something, reminding her of just how different their worlds really were. Across town, Lucas sat at the head of a long table, facing the stern expressions of his board members. The meeting had been going for over an hour, and the tension in the room was palpable. "The point is," said Werner, the oldest board member, "your personal life is affecting the company's image. Several major investors have expressed concerns." "My personal life is none of their business," Lucas replied coldly. "It becomes their business when you parade your relationship at public events," said Claudia, the only female board member. "The Hoffman reception last week was attended by every major player in European finance." "And?" Lucas challenged. "And you brought a hotel waitress as your date," Werner said bluntly. "It raises questions about your judgment." Lucas felt a surge of anger. Amara Jackson has a master's degree in linguistics from Emory University. She speaks 4 languages fluently. She's more intelligent than half the people in this room. "Then why is she serving drinks instead of using her education?" asked Heinrich, who had returned from his Zurich reassignment specifically for this meeting. "Because she's living her life on her terms," Lucas said firmly. "Something I respect." "The concern," Claudia said, trying to sound reasonable, "is that this relationship appears to be affecting your focus. The Vienna deal almost slipped through our fingers last month. That had nothing to do with Amara, and everything to do with their CFO's unreasonable demands. Nevertheless," Werner continued, "the board feels it would be best if you maintained a lower profile with Ms. Jackson until the Frankfurt merger is complete." Lucas leaned forward, his voice dangerously quiet. "Are you asking me to hide my relationship?" "We're asking you to put the company first," Heinrich said, "as you always have. Until the merger is complete," Werner added. "Just a few months. And then what?" Lucas asked. "You'll find another reason, another deal, another merger." The board members exchanged glances. "Lucas," Claudia said gently, "you know how this works. Perception matters. Your grandfather built this company on reputation and trust. My grandfather also taught me that integrity matters more than perception," Lucas countered. "I won't pretend to be something I'm not to make investors comfortable." "No one is asking you to end the relationship," Werner said. "Just to be more discreet." Lucas stood abruptly. "This meeting is over. The Frankfurt merger will proceed as planned, and I will continue to see Amara Jackson openly and proudly. If that's a problem for any of you, I suggest you reconsider your position on this board." He walked out, leaving stunned silence behind him. Instead of returning to his office, Lucas drove to his grandmother's house. He needed Ilse's wisdom now more than ever. He found her in her garden room, bundled against the winter chill despite the warmth inside. Her health had deteriorated in recent weeks, but her eyes brightened when she saw him. "Twice in 1 week," she said, as he kissed her cheek. "I must be dying." "Don't joke about that," he said, sitting beside her. "Why not? I'm 92. Death and I are old acquaintances." She studied his face. "What's troubling you?" "The board. They don't approve of Amara," Ilse snorted. "Old men protecting old ways. What exactly don't they approve of? Her intelligence? Her beauty? Her kindness? Her job? Her background? The fact that she's not from our world?" "Your world," Ilse corrected. "Not mine. I came from nothing, remember? Your grandfather married me when I was a secretary in his office. The scandal nearly killed his mother." Lucas smiled despite himself. "I forgot about that. People always do. They see the money and forget the struggle." She patted his hand. "What does your heart tell you about this girl? That she's different, special, and does she make you happy?" "Yes, happier than I've been in years." "Then to hell with the board," Ilse said firmly. "Your grandfather built that company so we could live with dignity, not so it could dictate how we live." Lucas laughed. "You always did have a way with words, grandmother." "Speaking of words," she said, reaching for a small box on the table beside her, "I have something for you." Inside the box was a simple gold band with delicate engraving. "My wedding ring," Ilse explained. "Your grandfather gave it to me 68 years ago. I think it's time it continued its journey." Lucas stared at the ring in shock. "Grandmother, I don't know if we're—" "Of course you don't know," she interrupted. "No one ever knows. But when it's right, you feel it. Do you feel it, Lucas?" He thought of Amara, her smile, her intelligence, the way she challenged him, the way she saw past his wealth to the man beneath. "Yes," he said softly, "I feel it." "Then take the ring. Use it when the time is right." Ilse closed the box and pressed it into his hand. "And remember, love is the only investment that never loses value." When Lucas returned to the penthouse that evening, he found Amara curled up on his sofa, reading one of his German philosophy books. "Heavy reading," he commented, kissing the top of her head. "Interesting, though." She looked up at him. How was your meeting? Predictable. He sat beside her, not wanting to share the board's disapproval. How was your day? My father called. She closed the book. He offered me a tenure-track position at Emory. They need an answer by the end of the month. Lucas felt a cold weight in his stomach. In Atlanta? Yes. What did you tell him? That I'd think about it? Silence stretched between them, filled with unspoken questions. Is that what you want? Lucas finally asked. To go back to Atlanta? To academia? Amara sighed. I don't know. A year ago, I'd have said no without hesitation. But now what? Now, I'm not sure what I want. She looked at him directly. What about you? What do you want? The small box felt heavy in his pocket, but the moment didn't feel right. Not with this uncertainty hanging between them. I want you to be happy, he said simply, whether that's in Berlin or Atlanta. That's not an answer, Lucas. It's the only one I have right now. They left it at that, neither willing to push further, both aware that something had shifted. A decision point was approaching, one that would change everything. The next week passed in a strange limbo. They continued their routine, dinners, conversations, nights together, but the specter of Amara's potential departure hung over them. Lucas threw himself into work, determined to secure the Frankfurt merger quickly, hoping it would appease the board and remove at least one obstacle from their path. Amara picked up extra shifts at the hotel, as if preparing for a future where she might need the money for a move back to the States. They didn't discuss it again until Friday night, when Lucas arrived at her apartment with takeout and a determined expression. We need to talk, he said, as they sat at her small kitchen table. Those are never good words, Amara replied, trying to keep her tone light. I've been thinking about your father's offer. She raised an eyebrow. My father's offer? Not mine. The position at Emory, he clarified. It's a good opportunity. It is. But there are also good universities in Berlin, or anywhere in Europe, if you wanted to stay. Amara put down her fork. Are you asking me to stay? Yes. His voice was firm. I'm asking you to stay. Because of us? Because I love you. The words came out simply, naturally, as if he'd said them 100 times before instead of never. Amara's eyes widened. Lucas, you don't have to say it back, he said quickly. But I needed you to know before you make your decision. It's not that simple, she said softly. You have your whole life here, your company, your grandmother. I'd be giving up my chance at Emory, maybe burning bridges in academia. I know it's asking a lot. And what about your board? She asked. Heinrich made it pretty clear where they stand on your relationship with the Waitress. Lucas looked surprised. How did you know about that? Berlin is a small city in some ways. People talk, especially to the invisible staff serving their drinks. He sighed. The board doesn't control my personal life, but they influence your business, your success, everything you've worked for. None of that matters if I'm not happy. He reached across the table to take her hand. And I'm happiest when I'm with you. Amara felt tears threatening. I'm scared, Lucas, scared of changing my whole life for a relationship that might not last, he finished. I can't promise forever. No one can. But I can promise to love you today and tomorrow and every day after that for as long as you'll let me. He reached into his pocket and pulled out the small box his grandmother had given him. This was my grandmother's. She wanted you to have it, when the time was right. Amara's breath caught as he opened the box to reveal the delicate gold band. I'm not proposing. Not yet, he clarified. But I am asking you to believe in us, to give us a real chance. Tears spilled down her cheeks. Lucas, His phone rang, interrupting the moment. He ignored it, but it immediately rang again. You should get that, Amara said, wiping her eyes. With obvious reluctance, he checked the screen. It's the nursing service from my grandmother's house, he answered quickly, his expression changing from annoyance to concern as he listened. I'll be right there, he said, ending the call. Grandmother's had a fall. They've called an ambulance. Go, Amara said immediately. I'll come with you. They rushed to the hospital, finding Ilse already in the emergency room, looking small and fragile in the hospital bed. All this fuss over a little fall, she said when she saw them, though her voice was weaker than usual. You broke your hip, Mrs. Ehrenfeld, the doctor corrected gently. At your age, that's serious. At my age, a paper cut is serious, Ilse retorted. Despite her brave words, the prognosis wasn't good. At 92, surgery was risky, but without it, she would be bedridden. Do the surgery, Ilse told the doctors firmly. I've survived worse than your scalpels. As they prepared her for the operating room, she beckoned Amara closer. Did he give you my ring? She whispered. Amara nodded, tears in her eyes. Good. Wear it proudly. My Carl always said the most valuable things aren't kept in bank vaults. Save your strength, grandmother, Lucas said, taking her other hand. Nonsense. If these are my last words, they'd better be good ones. She looked between them. Love each other. That's all that matters in the end. The nurses came to take her to surgery then, leaving Lucas and Amara to wait in the sterile hospital corridor. She'll be okay, Amara said, though she wasn't sure she believed it. She's strong. She is, Lucas agreed, but she's also 92. Hours passed as they waited. Lucas paced the corridor while Amara sat quietly, thinking about Ilsa's words, about Lucas's almost proposal, about the decision she needed to make. When the surgeon finally appeared, his expression was grave. The surgery went as well as could be expected, he said, but her heart is weak. The next 24 hours will be critical. They were allowed to see her briefly in recovery. Ilsa was pale and still, looking every one of her 92 years. I can't lose her, Lucas whispered as they stood by her bedside. She's all the family I have left. Amara put her arm around his waist. You have me too. He looked down at her, his eyes filled with emotion. Do I? Before she could answer, Ilsa's monitors began to beep alarmingly. Nurses rushed in, pushing them aside as the doctor was called. They watched helplessly as the medical team worked, until finally the doctor stepped back, shaking his head. I'm sorry, he said softly. Her heart couldn't take the strain. Lucas stood frozen, his face a mask of shock and grief. Amara guided him to a chair, holding him as the first tears came. In the days that followed, Amara barely left his side. She arranged time off from the hotel, helped with the funeral preparations, and stood beside Lucas as he greeted mourners at the service. The board members all attended, along with business associates and friends. Many looked curiously at Amara, clearly wondering about her place in Lucas's life, but she ignored their stares, focused only on supporting him through his grief. It was a week after the funeral when Lucas received a letter from his grandmother's attorney. She left me the house, he told Amara as they sat in his penthouse, and a letter. He unfolded a sheet of paper covered in Ilsa's spidery handwriting. My dearest Lucas, he read aloud, his voice thick with emotion. If you're reading this, I've finally worn out my welcome on this earth. Don't be sad for too long. I've had a good life, far longer and richer than I ever expected when I was a girl hiding from bombs. Lucas paused, composing himself before continuing. The house is yours now, along with everything in it. But the most valuable thing I've left you isn't in the will. It's the capacity to love deeply and truly, the way your grandfather loved me. I see that love in your eyes when you look at Amara. Amara's breath caught as Lucas continued reading. She's special, that girl. She sees the real you, not the CEO or the rich man, but the boy I raised to be kind and true. Don't let her go, Lucas. Don't let the business or the board or anyone else tell you who to love. Tears were flowing freely down his face now, but he kept reading. In the top drawer of my dresser, you'll find a small blue book. It's my journal from the year I met your grandfather. Read it and you'll understand that love is worth any sacrifice, any risk. Be brave, my boy. Be happy. All my love, grandmother. Lucas folded the letter carefully and looked up at Amara, his eyes red but determined. She's right, he said softly. About all of it. Amara took his hand. Lucas, I've been thinking. About Emery. About staying in Berlin. About us. And I need to tell you something important. She took a deep breath. I love you too. I think I have for a while now, but I was too scared to admit it. His face transformed, grief momentarily overshadowed by joy. But, she continued, I can't stay in Berlin just for you. I need my own path, my own purpose. I understand, he said, though disappointment clouded his eyes. So I called Berlin University yesterday. They have an opening in their linguistics department. It's not tenure track yet, but it's a start. Lucas stared at her in disbelief. You're staying? I'm staying. Not just for you, but for me too. For us. He pulled her into his arms, holding her as if he might never let go. I love you, Amara Jackson. I love you too, Lucas Ehrenfeld. As they held each other, both knew that challenges still lay ahead. The board wouldn't suddenly approve of their relationship. Her father wouldn't immediately understand her choice. Their different worlds wouldn't magically align. But in that moment, none of that mattered. They had found something rare and precious in each other, something worth fighting for. And fight they would. Spring came to Berlin, bringing new life to the city and to Amara and Lucas's relationship. Amara had started her position at Berlin University, teaching linguistics to eager undergraduates. She'd given notice at the hotel, though she occasionally still filled in for special events when her former supervisor called in desperate need of someone who spoke multiple languages. Lucas had thrown himself back into work after his grandmother's death, focusing on finalizing the Frankfurt merger that had consumed so much of the board's attention. But evenings and weekends belonged to Amara, as they slowly built a life together. They'd begun renovating Ilse's country house, preserving its charm while updating the aging infrastructure. Weekends were spent there, away from the bustle of Berlin and the pressures of their professional lives. "What do you think about this color for the kitchen?" Amara asked one Saturday morning, holding up a paint sample in a warm yellow shade. Lucas looked up from the financial reports he'd brought with him. "It's nice, cheerful." "You didn't even look at it," she chided, coming to sit beside him at the old wooden table that had been in the house for generations. He smiled apologetically. "Sorry, the board meeting on Monday has me distracted." "The merger, among other things." He set the reports aside. "They've called a special session to discuss company image and leadership." Amara frowned. "Meaning you and me, most likely." "What are you going to do?" Lucas took her hand, running his thumb over her fingers. "Stand my ground. The merger is almost complete. They can't touch me professionally. My results are too good, so they're trying to control me personally. I don't want to be the reason your board turns against you. You're not. Their outdated thinking is." He kissed her hand. "Now, show me that paint color again, properly this time." She held up the sample, and he studied it with exaggerated seriousness that made her laugh. "Perfect," he declared. "Like sunshine." Later that day, as they were having lunch on the terrace, Amara's phone rang. It was her father, a call she'd been avoiding for weeks. "I should take this," she said reluctantly. Lucas nodded. "I'll give you some privacy," she answered as he walked inside. "Hi, Dad." "Amara." Her father's voice was stiff with disapproval. "I've been trying to reach you." "I know. I've been busy with the new job." "Yes, your position at Berlin University. Not exactly Emory, is it?" She sighed. "It's a good school, Dad, and a good opportunity. A step down from a tenure-track position, and we both know it." He paused. "Is it worth it? For this man?" "I didn't take the job for Lucas. I took it for me." "Really? Because from where I stand, it looks like you've rearranged your entire future around a relationship." The accusation stung because there was a grain of truth in it. "My future is still mine, Dad. I'm still teaching, still in academia, just in Berlin instead of Atlanta. For how long? Until he gets tired of playing house with a professor. Men like Ehrenfeld don't marry outside their social circle, Amara. I'm just trying to protect you from disappointment." Anger flared in her chest. "You don't know anything about Lucas or our relationship. I know his type. The business world is full of them. They use their money and charm to get what they want, then move on when something shinier comes along. That's not Lucas. You think you're special, different from all the other women who've thought the same thing?" Amara's grip tightened on the phone. "Yes, actually I do. And if you knew him at all, you'd understand why. I hope you're right, for your sake." His voice softened slightly. "I just don't want to see you hurt, throwing away opportunities for someone who might not be there in the long run. I appreciate the concern, Dad, but I'm a grown woman. I make my own choices." Clearly, his tone cooled again. "The department has filled the position, by the way. Don't expect another offer anytime soon." After the call ended, Amara sat quietly, her father's words echoing in her mind. Was she fooling herself? Had she given up too much for Lucas? "Everything okay?" Lucas asked, coming back outside with fresh coffee. "My father sends his regards," she said dryly. "That good, huh? He thinks I'm making a huge mistake, giving up a prestigious position at Emory for a man who will eventually leave me for someone from his own world." Lucas's expression darkened. "He doesn't know me." "No, he doesn't." She looked up at him. "But sometimes I wonder if I do. We've been together less than a year, Lucas. We come from completely different worlds. Am I crazy to have changed my whole life for this?" He set down the coffee and knelt beside her chair, taking both her hands in his. "Do you regret it? Being with me? Moving to Berlin permanently?" She looked into his eyes, so earnest and full of love. "No, but it scares me sometimes, how much of myself I've invested in us." "I'm scared too," he admitted. "Scared of losing you, of not being enough, of disappointing you." The vulnerability in his voice melted her doubts. "You could never disappoint me, and you could never lose me." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box, Not his grandmother's ring box, but something new. I was going to wait until the house was finished, make it more romantic, but maybe now is the perfect time. He opened the box to reveal a stunning diamond ring. Amara Jackson, I love you more than I ever thought possible. Will you marry me? Tears filled her eyes. Lucas, before you answer, he continued quickly, I want you to know that I don't care what my board thinks, or what your father thinks, or what anyone else thinks. I just care about you, your happiness, your dreams, your future. If that means moving to Atlanta so you can take a position at Emory, I'll do it. If it means staying in Berlin, that works too. Whatever you want, wherever you want to be, I just want to be with you. The tears spilled over as she cupped his face in her hands. Yes, of course yes. He slid the ring onto her finger, then reached for his grandmother's gold band, which Amara had been wearing on a chain around her neck. This too, if you want. She nodded, and he added the delicate gold band beside the diamond engagement ring. Perfect, he whispered, kissing her deeply. Later that night, as they lay in bed in what had been Ilse's room and was now becoming theirs, Amara admired the rings on her finger. Tell me honestly, she said, are you worried about how the board will react? Lucas propped himself up on one elbow. No, and after Monday's meeting it won't matter anyway. What happens Monday? You'll see. He kissed her forehead. Get some sleep. We have painting to do tomorrow. Monday morning arrived with a flurry of messages on Lucas's phone. The board meeting had been moved up to 10 a.m., and several financial reporters had called requesting comments on the upcoming announcement. What announcement? Amara asked as they had breakfast in the penthouse. Nothing for you to worry about, Lucas assured her, though his expression was tense. Just go teach your classes. I'll see you tonight. Lucas, trust me, he said, kissing her quickly before heading to the door. Oh, and wear something nice tonight. I'm taking you to dinner at the Grand Berlin. The hotel? Why there? He smiled mysteriously. For old time's sake. Throughout her morning lectures, Amara found herself distracted, wondering what Lucas was planning. The Grand Berlin held a special place in their story. It was where they'd met, where he'd first revealed his prejudice and she'd first shown her spine, but they hadn't been back since she'd quit. Between classes, she checked her phone and was surprised to find several messages from former co-workers at the hotel, all variations of, "Have you seen the news?" She quickly searched Lucas's name online and gasped. Headlines screamed across financial news sites. Ehrenfeld calls surprise press conference. Rumors of leadership shake-up at Ehrenfeld Ventures. Frankfurt merger in jeopardy amid boardroom drama. She tried calling Lucas, but her call went straight to voicemail. What was he doing? As her last class ended, her phone buzzed with a text from him. Meet me at the Grand Berlin at 7 Ballroom, not restaurant. The ballroom. That was even stranger. The ballroom was used for events, not private dinners. By the time Amara arrived at the hotel that evening, wearing her finest dress and both rings prominently displayed, the lobby was buzzing with activity. She recognized several financial reporters and photographers milling about. Ms. Jackson, her former supervisor spotted her. You're here, everyone's been looking for you. What's going on? She asked, bewildered. You don't know? Mr. Ehrenfeld called a press conference. It's about to start in the ballroom. Amara's heart raced as she made her way through the crowd. The ballroom doors were open, revealing a room packed with people, reporters, business associates, and at the front, the entire board of Ehrenfeld Ventures, looking distinctly uncomfortable. Lucas stood at a podium at the center of the room, impeccably dressed in a suit she recognized as his favorite. His eyes scanned the crowd, lighting up when he spotted her at the back. Ah, perfect timing, he said into the microphone. Ladies and gentlemen, if you'll direct your attention to the back of the room, you'll see the reason we're all here today. All heads turned, and Amara froze as dozens of eyes and cameras focused on her. Ms. Jackson, would you please join me? Lucas asked, extending his hand toward her. On shaky legs, she made her way through the parting crowd, acutely aware of the whispers and stares. When she reached Lucas, he took her hand and kissed it gently before turning back to the microphone. For those of you who don't know, this is Dr. Amara Jackson, professor of linguistics at Berlin University, master of 4 languages, and as of this weekend, my fiancée. A murmur went through the crowd and cameras flashed. I've called this press conference to address rumors that have been circulating about my leadership and the future of Ehrenfeld Ventures, Lucas continued. Specifically, concerns that my personal relationship is somehow affecting my professional judgment. He looked directly at the board members as he spoke. For months, certain individuals have suggested that my relationship with Dr. Jackson is inappropriate, that it damages the company's image, that it distracts me from my duties as CEO. Werner shifted uncomfortably in his seat. Heinrich stared stonily ahead. They say I'm distracted, Lucas said, his voice rising with emotion. I say I've finally found something that makes the noise stop. The constant pressure, the endless deals, the hollow success, all of it fades away when I'm with her. He turned to look at Amara, his eyes full of love. She reminds me every day that there's more to life than profit margins and merger deals. She challenges me to be better, not just as a businessman, but as a human being. Turning back to the crowd, his expression hardened. So yes, she has changed me, for the better. And if certain board members can't see that, if loving her costs me a seat at their table, then they can eat alone. Gasps and whispers rippled through the room. The board members looked stunned. To be perfectly clear, Lucas continued, I am not stepping down as CEO. The Frankfurt merger will proceed as planned, but effective immediately, I am restructuring the board of directors to better reflect the future I envision for this company, a future built on innovation, inclusion, and integrity. He named several board members who would be retiring, including Werner and Heinrich, and announced their replacements. Younger, more diverse executives known for their progressive thinking. Ehrenfeld Ventures was founded by my grandfather, a man who married his secretary and built an empire with her by his side. Their love story inspired me as a child, and now I'm writing my own. He looked at Amara again, with a woman who is my equal in every way that matters. The press conference continued with questions about the merger and the board restructuring, but Amara barely heard them. She was overwhelmed by Lucas's public declaration, by the way he'd stood up to the board, by the pride in his voice when he spoke of her. When the formal questions ended and the crowd began to disperse, Lucas turned to her. I hope that wasn't too much. I wanted to end the whispers and rumors once and for all. It was, unexpected, she admitted, but wonderful. The ballroom gradually emptied until only they remained, standing in the same spot where he had first made his thoughtless comment about her and she had first put him in his place. Do you remember that night? He asked, as if reading her thoughts. Every word, she replied with a smile. Lucas nodded to someone at the back of the room, and soft music began to play. The lights dimmed, leaving only candlelight flickering on the tables. I arranged a private dinner, he explained, leading her to a single table set for two in the center of the otherwise empty ballroom. Just us, where it all began. As they sat across from each other, a waiter appeared with champagne, then discreetly disappeared. To new beginnings, Lucas said, raising his glass. And to understanding, Amara added, clinking her glass against his. They talked quietly over dinner, reminiscing about their first meeting, laughing at how far they'd come. When the dessert plates were cleared, Lucas reached across the table for her hand. I want to build a life where we never stop listening to each other, he said softly, where we always make the effort to understand, even when it's hard. Amara felt tears threatening again. I'd like that. He stood and pulled her to her feet, drawing her into a dance to the soft music still playing. As they swayed together in the dimly lit ballroom, Amara rested her head on his shoulder. I should call my father, she said after a while. Tell him about the engagement. Do you think he'll approve? Eventually, once he sees that you're not going anywhere. Lucas pulled back slightly to look into her eyes. Never. You're stuck with me now, Dr. Jackson. Promise? She whispered. In answer, he leaned closer and said softly, I love you. But this time he said it in perfect Southern English, his accent an exact match for her hometown. Amara laughed in delight. You've been practicing. I wanted to say it in your mother tongue, he explained, echoing the line from the promise he'd made to himself the night they met. Ich liebe dich, je t'aime, te amo, I love you, in every language. Those are the only words I need to hear, she replied, reaching up to touch his face. In any language. As they danced slowly under the chandeliers where their story had begun, Amara thought about the journey that had brought them here. From a chance encounter born of prejudice and pride, to a love strong enough to bridge their different worlds. He hadn't known she understood everything that first night. Now they both understood what mattered most. Each other. The end.